Welcome back to the channel where we explore, learn, and theorize about the Marvel Universe. Today I'll be breaking down the 4th episode of WandaVision, but if you haven't watched it yet or don't want any spoilers, don't worry because you can watch the first half of the video normally, where I'll be talking about Mr. Negative in Spider-Man 3, Fox's version of Deadpool 3, which would have included Wolverine, and the X-Men in WandaVision, and then I'll let you know when the spoilers are coming. If you're new to the channel, or even if you've been watching for a while, make sure you subscribe because more than 96% of you guys aren't subscribed. And if you think you're subbed, double check because apparently there's a glitch where people are getting unsubscribed from certain channels. And remember that a subscription is free for you, but it really helps the channel a lot. And you can always unsub later if you want. Now let's get started. Spider-Man 3 has once again thrown us a huge curveball, this time by setting up the villain Mr. Negative through Feast, which as we know from Spider-Man PS4, stands for Food, Emergency Aid, Shelter, and Training, and is run by Martin Lee. But what makes this even more interesting is that in Spider-Man Far From Home, Aunt May was working at a homeless support group which we now know was Feast, and it's setting up a similar if not identical story to the one we saw in Spider-Man PS4. And while Mr. Negative definitely won't appear in Spider-Man 3, because May is already working there, it could be the perfect place for her to lay low at while Peter is on the run. And it's worth mentioning that Miles Morales has been rumored to appear in Spider-Man 3 as well, and as unlikely as that is, Miles volunteered at Feast 2 and could be where he meets Peter in Spider-Man 4. Moving on, according to Ryan Reynolds himself, before Disney bought Fox, Deadpool 3 was going to be a road trip between Deadpool and Logan, Rashomon-Style. And a Rashomon-Style story is where the same event is retold by several characters, but the story is always different from each character's point of view and how they remember specific things happening. For example, Wolverine might say that he was wearing his normal biker outfit, but Deadpool says, "Nope, you were part of the X-Force with me and you were wearing your black suit." But then Cable says, "No, you were in the yellow suit." And I think that could have been really interesting. But we know that Deadpool 3 is coming and it'll stay rated R, so who knows, we might get something similar or maybe even better. Next, if you've watched WandaVision, then you saw the commercial in the first episode for the Toastmate 2000, which was a direct connection to Iron Man and the death of Wanda and Pietro's parents, which ultimately led to them getting their powers. In the 3rd episode, we saw Hydra Soak, which many have been connecting to the soap and agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that Hydra used to mind control Phil Coulson, and it's rumored that Clark Gregg could return as Phil Coulson in the near future. But the commercial that we all missed that has a huge Easter egg was the Strucker brand watch in episode 2 combined with the clock on the radio. If you look closely at the hands on the clocks at different shots, and using the semaphore signaling alphabet, you can see that the position of the hand spells out X-Men. And we of course know that Wanda and Pietro are mutants, even if they're not officially called that yet in the MCU. We also know that Wanda's kids Wiccan and Speed are mutants as well, and the snaps from Avengers Infinity War and Endgame are rumored to be what awakened the mutants' latent X gene. Not to mention that in the comics, Magneto was Wanda and Pietro's father before it was retconned in 2012 during the Access event. And while we probably won't see any X-Men appear in the show, it's really cool that Marvel has been hinting at them so heavily recently. And lastly, the 4th episode of WandaVision just came out, so if you haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, then click off the video now, as I'll be breaking down the 4th episode and covering all the Easter eggs. So once again, there will be major spoilers ahead for the 4th episode of WandaVision. Starting off, we learn that Monica Rambeau was snapped away in Avengers Infinity War, and this part of the episode takes place when Hulk brings everyone back in 2023. Monica, along with nurses, doctors, and patients, begin to rematerialize, and we learn that at the time of the blip, she had been in the hospital with her mother Maria. Unfortunately, while the procedure went well in 2018, Monica's mother got cancer again and died 2 years later. As Monica is waking up though, we hear Captain Marvel's voice calling her by her childhood nickname, Lieutenant Trouble. We then get our first look at SWORD, which in the MCU stands for Sentient Weapon Observation Response Division, and we also learn that Monica's mother Maria helped build it from the ground up, meaning that SWORD isn't a new agency, but was in development by Maria and Nick Fury since Captain Marvel in the 90s. We also see a picture of Maria, which reveals that her nickname was Photon, and Photon is a reference to Monica Rambeau herself, as it was the first superhero name she used in the comics after being Captain Marvel, and before eventually switching to the more well-known name Spectrum. So while we assume that Monica would be Spectrum in the MCU, it wouldn't surprise me if she used the name Photon to honor her mother. Moving on, Monica returns to SWORD and meets up with a man named Tyler Hayward, who's an original character for WandaVision, and sends her on a mission to Westview. When she arrives in Westview, she meets Jimmy Woo. We once again see that Westview is in fact a real town, but no one remembers it, even though the cops they ask are from Eastview. We then see Monica use a SWORD drone to check out the town, but it gets sucked in, and we later find out that it was a helicopter Wanda found in her bushes. Monica then goes to investigate where the drone went, and is sucked into the town as well. Jimmy Woo then contacts SWORD, and is why we later see that there's a base surrounding the town. We're also reintroduced to Darcy Lewis, who we hadn't seen since Thor: The Dark World, and she's the one that realizes that they can see what's going on in Westview by watching the sitcom episodes, that Wanda and Vision are behind all of it, and she's also the one that lets Jimmy Woo talk with Wanda through the radio in episode 2. We also learn that the Beekeeper in episode 2 wasn't an AIM agent. He's most likely not the villain Swarm either, but in fact a SWORD agent sent into the town to try to rescue Monica. But just like the drone and the rope that was holding him, which was turned into a jump rope, his hazmat suit was turned into the Beekeeper suit after crossing into Westview. We then see that SWORD is trying to figure out who all the people in Westview are, because the reason why they even learned about Westview in the first place was because they were trying to find a missing person from the Witness Protection Program who disappeared. When we return to S.W.O.R.D, we see that they've matched almost all the characters except for Dottie, Agnes, and Agnes's husband Ralph, who we know is most likely the Grim Reaper. We also see that Jimmy Woo is trying to figure out who's behind this, and he puts scrolls on the board. Now scrolls are important because S.W.O.R.D was built by Nick Fury and Maria Rambeau, who both met the scrolls in Captain Marvel and knew they were good. So if they're putting the scrolls on the board, even though Nick Fury trusted Talos to take his place in Spider-Man Far From Home, which actually takes place after WandaVision, it could be that the scrolls are already bad, and S.W.O.R.D knows that, which will lead into Secret Invasion. But what's weird is that WandaVision takes place before Spider-Man Far From Home, yet there was no connection like there will be in Spider-Man 3. So why is the multiverse affecting Spider-Man 3 so long after WandaVision, and it didn't affect it in Spider-Man Far From Home? Anyway, we then return to the end of episode 3, where Wanda throws Monica out of the sitcom when she mentioned that Ultron killed Pietro, and we see her not only using her powers, but she starts to remember everything. As almost immediately after when Vision walks back inside and asks where Geraldine is, he's dead, and looks exactly like how he did when Thanos ripped the Mind Stone out of his head. And we unfortunately know that Vision is in fact dead, as Paul Bettany recently revealed that there was a cut post-credits scene from Avengers Endgame which showed Wanda unzipping a body bag with Vision inside. And it's rumored that this version of Vision is actually Wonder Man, as we saw the picture of Wonder Man in the story featurette, and Wonder Oats in episode 2's intro at the grocery store. We also know that his brother the Grim Reaper, most likely played by Agnes's husband Ralph, will appear. And it could be that just like in the comics, this version of Vision is a duplicate of Wonder Man's brain, or that the Grim Reaper brought his dead brother back to life using Vision's body. And while most of us completely skipped over this detail, Vision never had super speed, but we've now seen him run fast to get the Doctor in episode 3, and Wanda made the statement that he can move at the speed of light in episode 1. And as it turns out, Wonder Man has similar powers to Vision, but with the addition of super speed. We then see Monica get launched out of Westview, and when Darcy and Jimmy try to see what happened, we learn that the show is being censored by someone that doesn't want the truth to get out. Possibly like Agatha Harkness, who is rumored to be possessed by the villain Nightmare, or most likely the main villain of the show, Mephisto, who probably put Wanda there in the first place. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Are you excited to see the X-Men in the MCU? What do you think of Mr. Negative appearing in Spider-Man 3? Would you have liked to see Fox's version of Deadpool 3? And what did you think of WandaVision episode 4? It was easily the best episode so far, and I can't wait to see what's next. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you'll never miss another video. Thanks for watching, and remember to wash your hands and stay safe.